It's time for your daily LSU baseball update with Musso at the box. Now, Matt Musso.
And welcome into another edition of Musso at the box. Well, y'all, that transfer portal stays busy here in Baton Rouge. Jay Johnson and company Tuesday morning land their sixth commitment out of the transfer portal. This one in now former Auburn center fielder Chris Stanfield, a guy that we have talked an awful lot about the last two seasons on this show in preparation for LSU's series against the Auburn Tigers. We'll reset plenty of that, talk about how Stanfield fits in with LSU, and go forth from there. We didn't get to it yesterday, the Derek Curiel news, so we'll talk more about that on today's show as well. Of course, Derek Curiel, top-rated, or one of the top-rated signees in LSU's 2024 class, has pulled his name out of the MLB Draft, says he will attend LSU. So we're going to talk a lot of outfield, a lot of outlook for the LSU outfield in 2025 here on today's Musso at the Box. Fired up to do so. Y'all smash the like button. Get subscribed up to the YouTube channel. If you have not already, get subscribed up on your favorite podcast app. If you have not already, follow me on social media. And let's get right to it. No need to waste any more time with the intro. We have plenty to talk about. So, as mentioned, right off there on the top, Tuesday morning, Jay Johnson sends out his tiger emoji tweet. About an hour later, we know that is confirmed to be now former Auburn center fielder Chris Stanfield. This is LSU's sixth commitment out of the portal, and it is a very big commit out of the portal for LSU, and it's a very needed commit out of the portal for LSU. And you might look at me kind of funny when I say that because LSU's outfield seems so set. We will get to that momentarily. What I want to do first is talk about Chris Stanfield, the player. Right off the top, what you need to know, 2-year starter at Auburn is Chris Stanfield. Both those years in center field, has been a career 278 hitter, 7 homers, 47 RBI. When he came out of high school, he was a top 20 player in the state of Florida. He was a top 85 player in the country. So very highly touted, very heralded, I should say, making his way to Auburn. 6'2", 195 pounds. You heard the career batting average there at 278. I will say that took a nice jump from his freshman season to a sophomore season at Auburn, where this past season, after hitting in the 240s as a freshman, this past season hit 276, but the average did rise to 283 in conference play, so very successful there. Where he stands out most is in the field. And if you've listened to this show before, specifically on Auburn Week, you know that because it is what we've highlighted about Chris Stanfield every single time. He catches everything in center field. Like, this is the type of defensive center fielder that LSU has had in the past when you think of just those elite guys out there, whether it was Andrew Stevenson, Dylan Cruz, in that regard of just the elite center fielder who goes out there and catches everything. The ball goes in the air, you know it's going to find his glove. That is the type caliber defender that Chris Stanfield is. In those 2 years at Auburn, he made just 3 errors out in center field. It is elite speed from him. I mean, you're talking low 6s on the 60-yard dash for a guy like Chris Stanfield. Just a incredibly talented, athletic prospect is Stanfield. Not huge on the base paths, but does have that ability. 18 of 22 stolen bases in his career, identical 9 out of 11 marks, both the freshman and a sophomore. So just a massive get from a talent standpoint. The thing to watch, he is a draft-eligible sophomore. There is no guarantee you get Chris Stanfield to campus. So that out of your 6 commits, that now makes 3 who are draft eligible. Luis Hernandez, Luke Hayden, and now Stanfield. But if you do get him here, he immediately throws his hat into the outfield race at LSU. Something that we probably didn't think was much of a race, but is now. And again, like I said, we'll get into that a little bit more momentarily. A few more things on Stanfield. He's a guy that Auburn had hit at the top of the lineup. So if you do get him to campus, this could be your leadoff hitter if you're LSU. He's also a guy who hit more towards the middle and the bottom of the lineup in his time at Auburn. So great versatility there, but the leadoff hitter aspect of this is very, very intriguing. That's where he hit the majority of his time as a freshman at Auburn. They did move him around a little bit more as a sophomore. Again, as we said, the numbers offensively aren't going to jump off the page at you. He's not a power hitter, much more of a contact guy. Think Michael Braswell, again, think leadoff guy. But in the same way with Braswell, think, all right, a guy who you can see the potential there in the SEC hitting 283 this last year as a sophomore, and you'd expect that jump, especially with a hitting coach, or I should say a head coach as adept at teaching hitting as Jay Johnson, and then Mark Wanaka, of course, who works with the hitters in extremely close quarters as well. You would look at this and say, okay, could he take a similar jump to a guy like a Michael Braswell or even a guy like Alex Milazzo? I mean, I think we all look at Alex Milazzo and see him hit 275 or whatever it was his last year at LSU, but when you think about where he came from, where the guy was hitting 140-something early in his career, 170-something early in his career, to see him make that jump under Jay Johnson and having to do it fight through injuries, I'd throw him in that type of category as well. You've seen that guys really take a jump at the plate when previously it wasn't necessarily their strength. They turned it into one. Chris Stanfield could be that next guy. So from a talent standpoint, from a tool standpoint, this is a major pickup for LSU and one you should be very, very excited for. Now, that's him as the player. And I should say also, for what it's worth, one more thing on the draft, on the draft aspect of this. Most people have him a third round selection, top 120 or so picks in the draft. If Chris Stanfield goes off the board in the top 3 rounds, he is not coming to LSU. So that's where your draft grade is on him right now. I know Joe Doyle, noted MLB scout, had that as well and put it out on Twitter that was his grade for Stanfield. So just keep that in mind when you talk about the draft eligibility aspect of this. Not only is he draft eligible, he's a draft risk if he goes in those top 3 rounds, per se. So that also speaks to the great potential that Major League Baseball teams see in him. Specifically, I don't really want to say the potential on defense. That's kind of already been realized, but the potential you can see at the plate, just have him, fill out a little bit more and get the right guy, on that swing, he could be really, really good. So that's Stanfield, the player. I said off the top, not only was it a big get for LSU, it was a needed get for LSU. And I understand how you could hear me say that and go, what are you talking about? LSU's outfield set for next year, right? That's a conversation we've had plenty. You got Jake Brown back. He should figure in to be your starting center fielder. You got Ashton Larson back. He should figure in to be, starting the outfield. Then Josh Pearson, a lot of people expect him to come back and vie for a spot in the outfield as well, where he's played really all of his 3 years at LSU, except for a few, stints here and there at second base as a junior. And I would say, yeah, that's right. That is the conversation we've had. But what we always like to do is look a little bit deeper, right? And you really don't have to look that deep to understand why this was such a needed get for LSU. Departing outfielders for LSU ended up being 4. Mac Bingham out of eligibility. Paxton Kling, Zeb Ruddle, Derek Mitchell all enter the transfer portal. That's 4 outfielders gone. That left you with Jake Brown, Ashton Larson. Again, we expect, or we're thinking Josh Pearson comes back for his senior year. Not that highly thought of in the draft landscape at the current moment. Not at the MLB Draft Combine, anything of that nature. So you would expect that to be a lean towards coming back, especially when his brother coming in, in this class. More on that momentarily. So that's 3, and that's the 3 you thought would start. After that, you had Mick Paul and Ethan Fry. Now, if you want to look a little deeper on Paul and Fry, Mick Paul's a guy who in 2 seasons has had 9 ABs. And to the best of my knowledge, as of now, he is still with LSU. He is not in the transfer portal or anything like that. Now, I look at a guy like Mick Paul, who was the number 1 player in his state coming out and has gotten 9 ABs in 2 seasons, and I could say, yeah, I'd understand if that guy looked elsewhere. But as of now, he hasn't. So you have that guy back. But again, it's 9 ABs in 2 seasons. That is not somebody that you can realistically count on because he's so unproven. It's not to say Mick Paul, if given an opportunity to actually go out there and compete and show what he's got in an expanded role, wouldn't blossom into somebody. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying the opportunity's been few and far between, and guys have kind of continually passed him up. And because he's just unproven through 2 seasons, you cannot realistically count on him. That's just the cold, hard truth there. You look at a guy like Ethan Fry, who has a lot of ability, and they've given him opportunity sparingly throughout his 2 seasons. 76 at-bats, a .237 average. What's disappointing is the injury really derailed what looked like it could have been his come-up as a sophomore this past season in 2024. You will remember that. It was really leading into that Vanderbilt series. He kind of started to get some ABs late in the series against, that would have been Arkansas, I guess, and then showed out in the midweek, had some clutch RBIs against Vanderbilt in the first game. He gets the start in the second game, delivers immediately in his first at-bat, and then dislocates his shoulder. The Tommy White injury, diving back to first base, and you never really saw him in the field again. You only saw him sparingly ABs throughout in a pinch hit role. But that is a guy that, sure, you can look at and go, okay, he could give you, he's a body out there for sure. The other thing with Fry is, not to say he won't have a role as a junior, because I think he probably will get a shot potentially to have a role as a junior. There's just flexibility there. He's a guy who also has played first base. I know there's some catcher in there. Ethan Fry's not. I don't view him as an actual option for LSU at catcher. I think he is more valuable to you potentially at first base or definitely in the outfield. But when you just look at those 2 guys that you have unproven behind Brown, Larson, Pearson, and the 4 that are out the door, that really left you with 3. You needed depth. You needed proven depth. Because, again, you go to the incoming side, and you see John Pearson, but that's a freshman. You see Derek Curiel, who we'll talk about here again momentarily, pulling his name out of the draft and coming in. And while he is an incredible talent and will get an opportunity early at LSU, he's still a freshman. You don't have that proven depth. Chris Stanfield gives you that proven depth. And if he makes it through the draft and makes it to campus, he's absolutely somebody who you look at as a potential day 1 starter, which means, either Brown, Larson, or Pearson, they're really going to have to fight for their job in the outfield. But that's okay. That's okay. You need proven depth, and this is a guy who gives you that from an SEC caliber as well. It's a huge get. It's a needed get because of what you lost and what you had coming in, and just the lack of, I don't want to say trust, but and I don't want to keep saying, proven and unproven, the lack of known commodity that you had behind what is returning. So hats off. I give this one a huge check mark. I love this pick. I love this player. I'm sure many of you can tell that. And I mean, he's been one of the guys that in covering the league and diving into everybody's team, and so we can give those in-depth previews and stuff before a series. He's always been a guy I've looked at and been like, man, it'd be nice if he wore the correct color jersey, and now he does. He's always like, I mean, he's the type of guy who's like, man, if he's on your team, you love him. If he's not, you hate him. And just strictly based off ability, now he is on your team. You'll see if you can get him through the draft. So big check mark, big, sign off on that one. Love the addition of Chris Stanfield, and hoping for LSU's sake that they do get him through the draft, because he could be a huge piece, both defensively, obviously, and offensively for the Tigers. Now, the other side of this that we want to discuss is Derek Curiel, who is one of LSU's top prospects in this 2024 signing class. We've talked about the depth of this class so much, and Derek Curiel is probably one of, I don't want to say the, but he's one of the best examples of that in this 2024 class. And this is what I mean by that. So, like, if I pull up LSU's recruiting class for 2024, ranked second in the country, that's just because of number of commits. You look at average, they're number one. Like, average player ranking, they're number one. And this will show that. Derek Curiel, who is the number 10 overall player in the country per perfect game. I'm going to say that again. Derek Curiel is the number 10 overall ranked player in America by perfect game, is the fourth highest rated prospect in this class for LSU. He's behind Connor Griffin, Cam Caminetti, and William Schmidt. So that just shows you kind of the depth of this class. And then there's Cade Armabidi, who we were talking about, or Armabidi, who we were talking about yesterday from a catcher standpoint. He's behind Curiel. And we're talking about him being a draft risk. Just shows you the depth. So 10th overall player in the country by perfect game. Outfielder out of the state of California, Orange Lutheran High School. Definitely Jay Johnson influence there, obviously, with the West Coast. 6'2", 175 pounds. Very toolsy guy is Derek Curiel. Plus speed, great defender in the outfield as well. A lot of the same tools that we just talked about with Chris Stanfield can cover just an immense amount of ground. The thing that is maybe holding him back from being just that slam dunk, first rounder right out of high school, like those guys in front of him in LSU's class, like Griffin, like Caminetti, like William Schmidt, he hasn't necessarily totally filled out. Like, it's a really good left-handed bat. The power just hasn't come through to that level yet for a guy like Derek Curiel. It's in there. They just have to get it out. 6'2", 175. That's a very projectable frame, and you could put at least 20 more pounds on him. And with that, power and technique and approach, all of that will follow. He's got everything else that you want right now. Good arm in the outfield. He's an elite defender already. So that's massive. The thing about it that we will caution and talk about all the time is, yes, he says he's coming. Yes, he says he's pulled out of the draft. But that's not going to stop a team from drafting him. You had guys in last year's class pull out of the draft that still went late. But they didn't get their number and they showed up. That could very well happen. Or somebody could say, no, we love the player, and we're going to give you the money even though you said you don't want it. We're going to make you turn it down to us face-to-face. And that's happened as well. I mean, we yesterday when we were talking about Aaron Beatty and Blaze Priester being draft risks, talked about the Christian Cairo example where he was on campus filling out classes in line for registration. The Cleveland Indians called him, said, hey, we have more money, and he got out of line and left. I give you an even more recent example where it's a guy who, in a similar vein as Curiel, who put this out on social media that, hey, don't draft me. I'm pulling out of the draft. I'm going to LSU, go Tigers, all that stuff. Paul Gervais. Y'all remember that? Paul Gervais got drafted by the Mets in the 11th round, tweeted out after, a few days or so had passed, tweeted out that running it back with LSU. And then the Mets called him with more money, and he deleted that tweet and left and went pro. There's so many examples. So, yes, it's awesome that Curiel is coming and says he's coming, and if you get him, it's a massive, massive get for you, and it's another hat that is immediately thrown into that outfield ring. Because here's the thing, and here's why I think you will get Derek Curiel to campus. This is my opinion as to why. And it's in the same vein as why you got Paxton Kling. I don't want to say why. It helped you get Paxton Kling. It helped you get Gavin Guidry. It helped you get Jared Jones. It helped you get Griffin Herring. You should see where I'm going with this. Derek Curiel would be a draft-eligible sophomore. He would be eligible for the 2026 draft. This is an opportunity for a guy who's probably projected right now, third round or so. Kylie McDaniel, noted scout and ESPN draft analyst, tweeted that out when Curiel made his decision public that have a third-round grade on him. So still good. You know, we're talking about Stanfield, top 100, top 120 picks or whatnot for what it's worth. MLB Pipeline had Curiel rated the number 117 player in this draft. So right in line with that. But if that's not his number, if that's not the price tag that he's going to command, all right, well, then you look at where this guy is. First of all, he's got plenty of leverage out of high school. But if he can go to LSU and only have to stay 2 years, he doesn't forfeit a lot of age. He doesn't forfeit any of that. Well, I don't want to say any of that stuff. He doesn't forfeit a lot of that portion of it. And then he has even more leverage as a sophomore. He goes into LSU, performs for 2 years, goes back into the draft as a sophomore, has even more leverage, can finagle a number maybe that way, or can come back for a junior year. But the fact that he could come to LSU and only have to spend 2 years rather than 3 and then go back into the draft is enticing for those guys. And it helped LSU get Jared Jones, Griffin Herring, Gavin Guidry, Paxton Lee. It helped them get all those guys, and I think it will help them get Derek Curiel too. So let's say he does show up. This is a guy who is, like we said, 10th in the country per perfect game. So if he shows up, he will match Cam Johnson as the highest ranked prospect to ever make it to campus. That's what you're dealing with. And again, he's the 4th ranked prospect in this class, which is absurd. That's what you're dealing with. And because of that, that's a guy that's going to get an opportunity to play immediately as a freshman. So he would throw his hat in the ring with Jake Brown, Ashton Larson, Josh Pearson, maybe Chris Stanfield. And you've got one of the most loaded outfields in the country. But you're going to give that guy an opportunity because you just don't get more talent than this to campus. And you have a great opportunity to do that right now. And that guy's going, he's going, because of that, he's going to be given an opportunity. And it's interesting because, you know, I know whatever, what about, you know, these guys? Well, Larson and Brown have both played different positions at LSU besides outfield. Now, it was both first base, but there's 9 spots, and a lot of them are open at LSU right now, particularly in the lineup. There's a way to get these guys in there all at once. And I'm just telling you, if Derek Curiel does make it here, which it seems like he will, and I think that he will, he's going to get an opportunity to play early and often. Whether that's in scrimmages or in regular season games, you're going to want to see what you have. Because you might only have him for 2 years, and he's just an elite talent. So, massive coups on Monday and on Tuesday for LSU's outfield in 2025. You feel a lot better about it looking at it now after Bingham, Kling, Ruddle, Mitchell leave. Now you're looking at Brown, Larson, Pearson, Stanfield, Curiel, and then you still have Mick Paul, you still have Ethan Fry, you still have John Pearson coming in as well. That's a very formidable group, and it also shows you more why guys like Ruddle, Mitchell, Kling leave. Because you're not going to stay somewhere when you just keep getting passed up by guys coming in. The outfield depth that LSU has had under Jay Johnson has been incredible, and it looks like it will continue to be in 2025. Really bright times for that position group at LSU, and a lot of athleticism and a lot of versatility out there as well. It's going to be fun to watch throughout the draft process and then into the fall, the preseason, and, of course, the 2025 regular season. We'll have you covered here, obviously, on Musso at the Box, so smash the like button. Get subscribed up on the YouTube channel. Get subscribed up on your favorite podcast app as well. Follow me on social media. All of that greatly appreciated. Enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for listening. Be here next time for more on Musso at the Box.